Do you know what loser's limp is? A few times when you watch sports, especially a race on TV, a person who is in a tight race and who loses the race will pull up and grab the leg and walk with a limp. It is to say that they lost the race because of pain they are suffering from at that time. Now, if it wasn't for that pain, maybe they could have won the race. It's called the loser's limp. It's not just athletes, but in life, we also have loser's limp. When we come up with excuses for our bad behaviors in life, or complaints in life, or dissatisfaction in life on other things and other people, rather than living a life that is worthy of God's name. I mean, if you really think about every individual, now I've been driving for Lyft for a couple of years now, and I have met, I would say now, I think last time I checked, close to 7,000 people. That's quite a bit of people I met. And every one of them have a story, and some of them are really sad, more so than the others, obviously. So there are people who are born into privilege than the others. I understand that. However, everyone has a story. Maybe it has to do with the way we were brought up. You know, maybe we're born with a lower IQ than other people. We don't have the kind of athletic body that other people have, the intelligence or opportunity of education, lack of motivation. We could blame our parents, abusive parents, maybe divorced parents, rape in life, drug addictions. There's so many things that we experience in life, right, that causes us to complain and use those things as a way of living a life with a limp. It's just excuses for our mistakes that we make all the time. And it seems that it is very popular today. Everybody is complaining about their past and other people rather than just living a life that is worthy of God's name. Just trying to anyways. Right? Instead of looking for excuses, looking for solutions. Right? Instead of hating someone, finding a way to love things that would suppress the hate that we may have. All right. Getting rid of loser's limp. How do you do that? I mean, that's the bigger thing. Now, you could say, well, believe in God, or let's try other things, other means to do it. But there's a story in the Bible from Joseph that I think is really good for loser's limp. You know about Joseph. He was loved by his father Jacob, who is a deceiver. He loved Joseph, but he didn't like his other children as much as Joseph. Right? So Joseph's brother was very jealous. Now, jealousy, whether they should have been jealous or not, caused these brothers to sell Joseph as a slave. All right, that's pretty tough. That hatred and jealousy must have been very, very high. And sometimes because of that, I mean, you could say that Joseph's brothers deserve to have that loser's limp. However, to sell your own brother as a slave, that's really, really weird. I mean, you find out more about these brothers' characters later on, the murders involved, prostitution. I mean, things like that. They're not really, you could say, a good example of a godly people. Joseph, on the other hand, right, he was sold as a slave and decided that he was going to become the best servant. And he does such a great job that Potiphar, the one that bought Joseph, really, really liked him. Then comes along Potiphar's wife, who is trying to seduce Joseph, and Joseph keep on saying no. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it. Maybe his love for his owner, Potiphar, maybe caused him to say no to his wife. But however, Joseph was falsely accused, and he was sent to jail. Similar things are happening today as well. People are falsely accused, right? So much hatred. We got to get rid of that. So Joseph was unfairly treated by his brothers, by his owner's wife. He's in prison for a long period of time. I don't know how he spent his days in jail, but he was a man of integrity, as you could say. I don't think he ever walked away from God. I think he continued to pray and have a good relationship with God. Then, you know the story. He eventually becomes the second most powerful person in Egypt. Now, how does he do that? Is it just getting along with God that he could overcome all the adversities and not develop loser's limp? I mean, I have gone through less problems than Joseph, and I could come out with so many different things, right? My parents called me stupid when I was growing up, that I wasn't going to end up not doing anything except work for them and work at a grocery store, things like that. And people have said that you could never make it as a basketball player, not because I wasn't good at it, but because of you're Asian and all that kind of stuff, you know. Basket is 10 foot high. It's way up there. Anyways, you could come up with so many different reasons why we are not happy with the current situation. But having a loser's limp is not the way to fix it. All right? Continue to be motivated and not complain and continue to work hard, and to succeed in life, you got to get rid of the loser's limp. Now, how is it that Joseph was able to do that? He didn't go to church all the time because he was in jail all the time. Right? So what he says at the end, though, is that Joseph names one of his sons Manasseh. And Manasseh means this. The definition of Manasseh is, God made me forget the past. Could it be as simple as that? As Paul was said, forgetting what is behind, right? Running the race to win is to forget what is behind. Forget it. God made me forget the past. And people hold on to the past as it's the most important thing. For people always say, you got to remember the past so that we will not make the same mistakes in the future. However, if you know anything about history, I don't know which philosopher said this, but he said, one thing we learn from history is that we keep on making the same mistakes. So we don't really learn from our past just because we know the past. Maybe the better way to move on to the future is to forget the past. So when I was taking my psychology classes, 30 years ago, and I think this is part where psychology have done great disservice to society, is when they start talking about the inner child. The things that are locked up in our mind of the past that needs to be brought up about. And when they became popular, I remember people are coming out saying, my parents raped me, they mistreated me, they spanked me, and all these things were coming out, which made the person even worse. Didn't help them at all. And then 20 years have gone past, so this must be around 10 years ago, I read a great long article about how we can't trust our mind, especially trying to remember what has happened in the past, because our brain could create a scenario. Like it could create our own loser's limp, even though we had nothing to do with it. Right? Nothing to do with it. I've never gone through a war in South Korea. My parents have. I never gone through the occupation from Japan when Japan occupied South Korea. I wasn't part of that, but my parents could speak Japanese because they were part of that. And they do talk about the mistreatments here and there and everything. And they talk about the hardships of, especially my father, who escaped North Korea to South Korea, and how harrowing that was. You could sometimes hear stories about people getting murdered, getting killed for trying to escape North Korea. My father-in-law talked about, sound of bullets and things like that. I never experienced anything like that. But the memory of that, right, of what my parents have told me, and memory of that, could it still affect me? I'm sure it does, because I'm sure a lot of people, South Koreans, would have problems with Japan. And I don't really follow the news of South Korea, but right now, South Korea and Japan are not getting along too well. All right? And when that happens, they always talk about the occupation. That memory comes back as a loser's limp. right? That doesn't really help the relationship. It only escalates the bad things from happening, right? To happen. So we got to get rid of it. How do we get rid of it? Basically, for Joseph was, God made me forget the past. Let's leave the past behind so that we can move forward. Get rid of loser's limp. I think that's a good lesson for all of us. Right? I hope that was helpful. God bless you. All right, let's get rid of the loser limp in our lives so we could continue to live a life that is worthy of God's name. Stay on the path of righteousness. Right? And the best way to do that is to forget what is behind. Yeah. God bless you. I'll see you next time.